Kale sat cross-legged on the observation deck of Outpost Vera 9, staring at the swirling violet storms of Nivara Prime far below, wondering how a human always seemed to end up in the middle of problems that would make a supernova blush. He was young, reckless, and dangerously overconfident, a combination that had earned him a reputation among his comrades as the soldier who should have died at least 7 times already, and somehow hadn't. "Maybe the universe has a soft spot for idiots," he muttered, kicking at a loose panel that refused to stay in place. Sparks flickered, and he yelped, hopping back before swearing that he'd file an intergalactic complaint about the ship's maintenance budget. The night began like any other. The low hum of the outpost's reactors, the occasional flicker of malfunctioning lights, and the endless chatter of soldiers speculating about what horrors the outer rim might throw at them next. Kale, however, was trying to perfect the art of balancing a cup of synth coffee on his helmet while doing a one-handed push-up, entirely convinced that his friends' laughter qualified as applause. "Seriously, I deserve a medal for this," he said, narrowly avoiding spilling coffee into a vent that had already been labeled, "Do not touch, ever." Then the alarms began, soft at first, like the hiccup of a sleeping giant, then escalating into the kind of wail that could wake a cryogenically frozen alien overlord. Kale froze mid-push-up, eyes wide, as the lights shifted from standard blue to an alarming shade of electric magenta. Somewhere in the hull, the intercom squawked a formal announcement, but the message was drowned out by the sheer absurdity of what Kale was about to see. A ship descended from the atmosphere, its hull crystalline and glinting under Nivara Prime's twin moons. It moved like liquid light, reflecting everything it passed yet refusing to obey the laws of physics Kale thought he knew. With a crackle of energy and a gust of recycled air that almost toppled him, the craft landed with elegance that screamed power and chaos simultaneously. From its hull, a figure emerged, tall and commanding, yet somehow impossibly graceful. Long ears arched backward from her head like twin blades of silver, catching the light in a way that made Kale momentarily forget to breathe. The alien queen had arrived, Lyriana. The name alone seemed to warp the air around her, giving everything a shimmer of danger and charm. Her eyes, vast and reflective, swept across the outpost and locked on Kale as if she had been searching for him across galaxies. She pointed dramatically, her long fingers glinting like starlight, and declared, "That human warrior will be mine." The words echoed through the corridors, bouncing off walls, alarms, and the unfortunate officer who happened to trip on the console in front of him. Kale blinked, coffee still in hand, and muttered, "Mine. Sure, if you don't mind sharing custody." Chaos erupted. Soldiers ran in every direction, shouting orders, accidentally slamming into each other, and setting off more alarms. Kale, for his part, had already ducked behind a stack of crates labeled highly explosive. "Do not open unless you're actually crazy," muttering, "Yep, that's me." Apparently, the universe voted for absolutely insane again. A maintenance robot scuttled past, emitting a high-pitched whine, and Kale swore he heard it groan in exasperation at the sudden shift in protocol. Lyriana's attendants followed her, each one a peculiar mix of elegance and alien eccentricity. One hovered mid-air, arms flailing while trying to maintain a perfectly polite bow. Another released a cloud of bioluminescent spores, which Kale swore made a rainbow around him that smelled faintly of burnt toast. The queen, unfazed by the pandemonium, strode forward, her every step bending the gravity around her slightly, so Kale had to cling to the nearest console to avoid being launched across the deck like an impromptu astronaut. When she finally reached him, Kale straightened, attempting a salute that looked more like an elaborate yoga pose gone wrong. Your Majesty, I think you've got the wrong guy. I'm more of a run-and-trip type than a destined-for-galactic rule type," he said, forcing a grin he hoped would pass for confidence. Lyriana raised a single arched brow, the movement slow and deliberate, as if she were examining a particularly curious artifact. "Incorrect," she said, voice smooth, yet layered with amusement. "You are exactly the one I seek." Before Kale could respond with another quip, the ship's security field activated around him, a shimmering net of pulsating energy that hummed softly. "Oh, that's cute," he muttered, trying to pat it down like it was a misbehaving pet. "Do I get treats if I behave?" Lyriana's amused chuckle vibrated in the air around him, a sound both terrifying and oddly endearing. He tried reasoning, a skill that had failed him in almost every previous crisis. "Look, I appreciate the interest, really, but I have paperwork, deadlines, human stuff, very important. It's very un-alien of me to just—" The Queen didn't listen. She extended a hand, and the energy field lifted with a soft sigh, almost as if the ship itself respected her authority. Kale had exactly 3 seconds to consider fleeing before she grasped his arm. He yelped, expecting to be flung into the far corner of the deck, but instead, he found himself lifted effortlessly. "You're heavier than you look," she said lightly, and Kale, flailing midair, muttered, "That's what my mother says too." Her attendants scurried to clear the way, though one of them slipped on a gravity bubble, sending themselves spinning past Kale like a glittering comet. He waved frantically, trying to appear heroic, while Lyriana maintained a perfect calm, one hand steadying him as if he were a fragile artifact rather than a flailing human. "You'll find my ship spacious," she said, amusement clear in her tone. "And the accommodations are tailored to ensure no human leaves without understanding their place." Kale swallowed. Humor was his shield, and he brandished it like a sword. "Oh, I fully intend to understand, probably better than I want to," he quipped. The Queen's long ears twitched, an expression Kale decided must be her equivalent of a grin. She didn't reply immediately. Instead, she tilted her head, examining him with curiosity and a hint of impatience. "Do you often joke in the face of danger?" she asked. "Joke, panic, cry, sometimes all three at once." "Keeps the universe entertained," Kale replied, managing a wink that earned a faint, amused hum from Lyriana's chest. With a fluid motion, she stepped onto a transporter pad, Kale awkwardly dangling in her grip. The deck beneath them shimmered and vanished, replaced by a cascade of colors as the transporter's energy enveloped them. Kale let out a string of nervous commentary, naming each color, each sound, each spark, and Lyriana simply listened, her long ears swaying rhythmically. Somehow, amidst the chaos and the alarm sirens fading behind them, Kale felt the absurd beginnings of a strange sort of trust. And so, the youngest human warrior, known for surviving every impossible scenario with a mixture of luck and sarcasm, began a journey across alien stars, at the mercy of a queen whose eyes gleamed with power, mischief, and perhaps the faintest hint of something far more complicated than conquest. Somewhere in the infinite void, Kale wondered if this would count as a regular Tuesday in his life, or a complete rewrite of his understanding of danger. Either way, he decided, he might as well crack another joke. "So, you come with snacks?" he asked. Lyriana tilted her head again, a dangerous glimmer in her eyes. "Snacks," she repeated, "can be arranged. But beware human. What you call humor here may become perilous elsewhere." Kale laughed, just enough to keep himself from panicking. Somewhere deep in the ship, a maintenance robot groaned as it attempted to document the humans' absurd commentary for posterity. Somewhere farther, a galaxy braced itself for the collision of reckless courage and alien ambition, laughter echoing in the void where danger had never been so funny. Kale awoke on a bed that seemed to float in midair, the mattress suspended by streams of softly glowing energy that adjusted automatically to his weight, shape, and for some inexplicable reason, his mood. The first thing he noticed was the ceiling, or rather, the absence of one. Above him, the ship's interior shimmered like a living nebula, swirls of violet and teal folding into each other, punctuated by stars that blinked as if winking at his confusion. He sat up, rubbing his eyes, and muttered, "Okay, universe, seriously. Am I dreaming? Or did I just get abducted by the galaxy's most stylish alien queen?" Before he could finish the thought, The door slid open with a hiss, and Lyriana entered, her long ears trailing behind her like twin ribbons of silver light. She carried herself with effortless elegance, yet her grin suggested she found Kale's bewilderment amusing. "You slept poorly," she said, her voice calm, almost musical, though the subtle hum beneath it hinted at unspoken power. "Or perhaps you are simply unaccustomed to luxury." "I'm fine," Kale replied hastily, though the energy mattress had indeed been disconcerting. Sleeping in zero gravity is like hugging a cloud that doesn't know you exist. Cozy but slightly judgmental. Lyriana's laugh was soft, almost teasing, and it made Kale flinch with an unexpected warmth. She tilted her head, ears swaying with a subtle rhythm that suggested she was considering how much patience she was willing to extend to human humor. "You are persistent," she said, more a statement than a question. Breakfast, such as it was, appeared moments later on a levitating tray, gelatinous spheres of shimmering colors that rearranged themselves according to Kale's gaze, emitting faint musical tones when touched. He poked one with a tentative finger, and it bounced, letting out a sound like a tiny bell before flattening itself back into perfect alignment. "So, are these snacks or are they plotting to eat me?" he asked, lifting a sphere and studying it suspiciously. Lyriana raised a single brow, amusement sparkling in her eyes. "They are both," she replied, "and yet they will tolerate your taste." After a breakfast that felt more like a lesson in quantum gastronomy than actual sustenance, Kale was guided through the ship's halls. Each corridor seemed to defy conventional geometry. Floors twisted into walls, walls into ceilings, and sometimes the ceiling decided to hang beneath their feet entirely. Kale stumbled once, nearly landing in a holographic koi pond that reflected not water but a soft violet mist. He splashed lightly, muttering, "Great, now I'm wet and interdimensionally confused. Just my luck." Lyriana, unfazed, held out a hand. "The ship responds to thought," she explained, motioning at a door that bent open before him. "Some humans find it disorienting." "Understatement of the millennium," Kale replied, stepping inside with caution. His eyes caught a series of alien attendants, each more eccentric than the last. One juggling floating orbs of light that hummed in harmonic frequencies, another balancing precariously atop a hovering platform, spinning in an elaborate dance to nowhere. Kale whispered to himself, "I swear I'm trapped in a cosmic circus with no popcorn." Their tour eventually led to the training chambers, or what Kale quickly realized were more like arenas designed to test human absurdity under alien physics. Gravity fluctuated unpredictably, laser grids wove through the floor like playful snakes, and a scoreboard lit up with strange symbols that seemed to taunt him personally. Lyriana gestured to the chamber, her ears flicking in amusement. "This will test your capabilities, and perhaps your sense of humor." Kale stepped in, half expecting to be zapped immediately. Instead, he was handed a set of weapons that shimmered with a light he could only describe as ridiculously intimidating but oddly decorative. The first challenge was zero-gravity combat against holographic opponents. Kale flailed dramatically at the first hologram, spinning helplessly as it sidestepped effortlessly. "I'm very strategic," he yelled, narrowly avoiding a laser sweep that left a faint scorch on the wall. Lyriana's soft chuckle echoed through the chamber. "Strategy is commendable, but creativity is encouraged," she said, watching him tumble, grab a floating orb and swing it like a baseball bat with a comic whoosh that somehow knocked the hologram out of sync. After the exercise, Kale collapsed onto a floating platform, panting. "All right, yes, you win. I admit, humans might be more fragile than your species expects, but at least we make it entertaining." Lyriana tilted her head, ears brushing against the low ceiling. "Entertainment is valuable," she said lightly, "and your persistence remarkable." Kale gave a lopsided grin. "Remind me to put that on my resume. Survived alien amusement park without permanent damage." As the day stretched on, Kale found himself navigating a hall of mirrors designed not just to distort appearance, but reality itself. Each reflection warped time and space slightly, creating illusions of impossible doorways, hallways leading nowhere, and occasionally, a Kale multiplied into a dozen flailing humans all yelling different jokes at once. He nearly collided with his own reflection, muttering, "Great, I always knew I had multiple personalities, but this is ridiculous." Lyriana appeared beside him, effortlessly sidestepping the illusions. "You are adaptable," she commented, her voice tinged with faint amusement. "Many humans would succumb to frustration." Lunch involved negotiating with a sentient kitchen system that insisted Kale answer riddles before it would serve food. He answered poorly, prompting the kitchen to eject a small army of micro-drones that chased him around the dining chamber while Lyriana observed, humming softly with amusement. He ducked and dodged, finally capturing a floating sandwich with a triumphant flourish. "Victory!" he yelled, holding the sandwich aloft like a conquering hero. Lyriana's ears twitched. "A human victorious over automated cuisine," she mused. "Remarkable indeed." Evenings brought quieter moments, though Kale never quite managed to relax completely. He discovered that Lyriana had a habit of wandering the ship alone, ears catching faint starlight and whispering to the ship's core in a language he couldn't comprehend. He tried to eavesdrop once and accidentally stumbled into a maintenance conduit, nearly causing a ship-wide power fluctuation. Lyriana had found it hilarious. Curiosity, a dangerous companion, she teased, offering him a hand to pull him out, but also charming. By the end of the second day, Kale realized he had begun to understand the rhythms of the alien ship. Not the physics, certainly, but the personality of the place, which, in a strange way, was connected to Lyriana herself. Her power was vast, unyielding, yet tempered with a playful unpredictability that mirrored the ship's quirks. He had survived combat exercises, logic-defying corridors, trick kitchens, and floating meals, all the while managing to crack jokes, evade embarrassment, and somehow maintain a tenuous sense of dignity. Sitting in a quiet observation chamber, looking out at the endless stars streaming past the hull, Kale whispered to himself, "You know, I might actually survive this, as long as I don't get eaten by sentient spaghetti or the furniture comes alive." The ship hummed, responding faintly to his words, and somewhere deep within, he sensed that Lyriana had heard him and smiled. She appeared beside him, long ears brushing the shimmering panels, her presence calm and commanding yet unthreatening. "You endure far more than I anticipated," she said softly, "and yet your spirit entertains me still." Kale, leaning back against the softly vibrating wall, shrugged. "Hey, it's a gift. Keeps me alive, keeps you laughing. You'd think I'd get a medal for that." Lyriana's subtle, almost imperceptible laugh echoed in the chamber. "Perhaps you will," she said, tilting her head, ears tracing lazy arcs. "But first, you must understand that this amusement is only the beginning." Kale grinned, half in nervousness, half in defiance. "Great, more chaos. I was hoping for a nap, but I guess the universe had other plans." Lyriana watched him, long ears swaying in soft rhythms that seemed to sync with his pulse. Somewhere in the quiet hum of the ship, amid impossible corridors and sentient holograms, Kale realized he was no longer just a human lost in alien authority. He was a player in a game where humor, courage, and sheer stubbornness might just determine the fate of stars. Kale woke to the soft hum of the ship's engines, a rhythm that felt like the heartbeat of the galaxy itself. Outside, Nivara Prime glimmered beneath the twin moons, storms painting the atmosphere in violent purples and greens that danced across the hull like fireworks. He stretched, swinging his legs over the edge of the floating platform bed and noticing, with a hint of disbelief, that he had actually grown accustomed to zero-gravity mornings. "Well," he muttered to himself, "I guess the universe is training me to float instead of trip over my own feet. Progress." Lyriana appeared in the doorway, ears tilted with subtle amusement, long hair brushing her shoulders like silver liquid. "You rest well," she observed, voice soft yet commanding, carrying a resonance that could bend the attention of even the most rebellious stars. The council will convene soon, and your presence is requested. Kale blinked. Council. He grimaced, realizing that the galactic paperwork and politics he had joked about before were about to come alive in ways far more complex than sentient kitchens or floating sandwiches. Ah, yes, alien bureaucracy. My favorite pastime. Lead the way, your earliness. He grinned awkwardly, and Lyriana tilted her head, a faint smile tugging at her lips. The council chamber was a spectacle of interstellar diplomacy. Representatives from dozens of alien species, each more visually bewildering than the last, convened around a holographic table that shifted forms and colors according to the gravity of the discussion. Some hovered, others were encased in bioglass suits filled with iridescent liquids, and a few kept muttering in languages that made Kale suspect they were inventing insults he couldn't yet understand. Lyriana led him forward, long ears brushing against the luminescent railings. Your human instincts may prove useful, she whispered, and Kale raised an eyebrow. Useful? You mean like surviving sentient spaghetti, or actual diplomacy? As the council began, representatives voiced their outrage, curiosity, and mild envy about a human warrior being so brazenly protected, and claimed, by an alien queen. Kale, seated awkwardly on a gravity-adjusted platform that kept him at eye level with beings twice his height, raised his hands. Hi, I just want to say, before things escalate, that I have a very flexible definition of allegiance, and my main goal is not exploding. Or making anyone explode. Mostly. Some representatives blinked, others snorted, and a holographic octopoid delegate actually face-palmed with a tentacle. Lyriana's subtle laughter vibrated through the air, and Kale felt the odd reassurance of having an ally, albeit an extremely unpredictable one. Negotiations spiraled into challenges, each more absurd and testing than the last. Gravity anomalies in the chamber, rooms morphing mid-discussion, and even a minor skirmish involving a floating cup of quantum tea that refused to stay in one timeline. Kale, surprisingly nimble in improvisation, began to thrive, juggling arguments, dodging laser etiquette sensors, and even cracking jokes that disarmed tempers. No, I'm serious, he said to a particularly aggressive delegate. If we all explode here, Nivara Prime's weather patterns will get jealous of our fireworks. Let's try diplomacy first. It worked, at least partially. Several species chuckled, and one snorted, apparently projecting humor as an energy pulse that tickled Kale's earlobes. Between sessions, Kale wandered through the ship, accompanied by Lyriana, observing the endless corridors that twisted reality like a playful child rearranging a kaleidoscope. You've adapted remarkably, she commented, ears flicking like delicate antennae. Most humans would have panicked, sulked, or failed spectacularly by now. Kale grinned. I've had practice. Plus, laughter is a weapon too. Works against boredom, gravity anomalies, and apparently interstellar councils. Lyriana's smile widened faintly, a rare softness that gave Kale a warmth he hadn't expected. Then came the crisis. A rival faction of alien warlords, offended by Lyriana's claim over a human and the disruption it caused in their political machinations, activated a pulse that threatened to destabilize the entire chamber. Chaos erupted, lights flickered, holograms dissolved, and gravity shifted violently. Kale, reacting instinctively, grabbed a floating delegate and swung him safely onto a solid platform while simultaneously manipulating a panel of alien controls he didn't understand. Somehow, improbably, he stabilized the room. Okay, who's next on the danger schedule? Because I think I deserve a coffee or three, he joked, breathing hard. Lyriana watched him, long ears brushing her shoulders, eyes glinting like twin moons. You see patterns, she said softly, almost to herself. You adapt and you endure. That is why you are remarkable. Kale, chest heaving, dared a grin. Remarkable and humble, right? Don't forget humble, very important trait. Lyriana's laugh, soft and melodic, echoed, and for a moment the tension of the council, the danger, and the swirling chaos faded. With Kale's unorthodox methods and quick thinking, the council crisis was averted, rival warlords appeased, mostly by Kale's mix of humor and accidental genius, and a tentative interstellar accord was reached. Lyriana's authority was affirmed, her claim over him acknowledged with amusement rather than anger, and Kale realized that he had gone from a reckless, sarcastic soldier to someone whose courage and ingenuity could genuinely influence alien politics. He even found himself quietly proud of the subtle respect he had earned across species who had originally dismissed humans as fragile or inconsequential. Later, in the quiet of the observation chamber, Kale and Lyriana watched stars blur past the hull at faster-than-light speed. The ship hummed softly, alive, a reflection of its queen and its human companion. Kale, stretched out and relaxed for the first time since arrival, let himself savor a rare moment of peace. "You know," he said, "I never imagined I'd survive all of this. And yet here I am, floating, unexploded and mildly heroic. Probably the most boring heroic story in galactic history." Lyriana's ears flicked with a faint laugh. "You are no longer merely human," she said quietly. "You are a force of adaptation, of unpredictability, of humor in chaos. Perhaps that is why I claimed you." Kale blinked. "Claimed me, huh? That sounds ominous, but in a good way." He smiled awkwardly, feeling the weight of all he had endured. Somehow, amidst humor, peril, and endless absurdities, he had grown, resilient, clever, and even capable of subtle diplomacy when life demanded it. The ship slowed, settling into a serene orbit over a newly charted system, stars reflecting in the crystalline hull. Kale leaned against the railing, watching the vastness of space with a quiet awe. Lyriana joined him, long ears brushing his shoulder gently, a silent promise of partnership and mutual understanding. "So," Kale said with a grin, "do we plot more adventures, or is it time for snacks?" Lyriana tilted her head, smiling faintly, ears swaying in rhythm with the soft hum of the ship. "Both," she replied, and in that simple statement, Kale realized that the journey was far from over, but he would face it differently now. With courage, humor, and a human stubbornness tempered by experience, and with the Queen beside him, not as an adversary but as an unexpected ally and companion. Kale exhaled, eyes scanning the stars, feeling the shift within himself. The reckless, sarcastic soldier who had stumbled through impossible situations had grown into someone capable of wit, insight, and heroism in a galaxy that demanded all three. And somewhere deep in the hull, the ship hummed in quiet approval, carrying them both toward adventures that would be dangerous, absurd, and yet undeniably theirs. The human and the alien queen stood side by side, laughter and light weaving through the infinite void. And for the first time, Kale allowed himself to imagine not just surviving the universe but thriving in it.